No female lead+no system+non rebirth. My name is Chris, and I am a useless person without a chakra. Nevertheless, I am still happy to learn everything I have seen. My background is not clear, but it's not important anymore. Who would care about dust like me? Fortunately, I met Mr. Orochimaru, who also craves knowledge. Regardless of his other goals, I am willing to believe that he is a good scholar. The turmoil in the world of ninja is like a dream, and with the knowledge I have learned, I want to engrave 100 years of the ninja world in history. I will answer your question and hope you will repay me with equivalent knowledge. Chapter 1. Unknown People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the First Ninja War, peace lasted for a considerable period of time, and currently, it seems that there will not be any sudden outbreak of war. Little Chris, are you still going to see it today? Oh, of course, Zilai, brother. Chris has been following Zilai for a long time, but every time Zilai practices, Chris just hides behind the tree and watches from a distance. He really envies Zilai, having teachers, companions, and chakra. Speaking of which, no one is without chakra, it's just about whether it can be called. Chris is very special, no matter how much he tries, he cannot call chakra. When the teachers at the ninja school tried to intervene with external forces, they were also unsuccessful. So Chris could only choose to practice physical arts, but he still preferred to learn other knowledge, so he never graduated and ultimately decided to quit school. Chris doesn't know where he was born, as he was already in the Kiba orphanage when he remembered it. For him, the concept of family is very vague. Since leaving school, he has chosen to do some very simple tasks to earn living expenses, such as collecting herbs, and he is particularly skilled at it. Following Zilai all the way to the training ground, Chris separated from him. Zilai also met his companions, and Chris hid in the forest to watch. His behavior is not considered covert, and they have always been aware of Chris's existence since then. Zilai, that little guy has come again. Teacher Yuanfei, he won't disturb us. Hey, Monkey Flying Sun Slayer sighed, let's start today's training. Then he took out 2 bells and shook them twice in front of the 3 students. Here are 2 bells, those who grab them can eat bento. But isn't that just 2? Zilai also rubbed his head and asked. Shut up, you bastard, the blonde girl punched Zilai on the head. Don't interrupt the teacher. The boy with the snake's erect pupils didn't react much, just showed a hint of helplessness. Hey, flat-chested woman, you wouldn't think you could grab the bell, would you? Zilai also covered her bulging bag and cursed fiercely. What? The blonde girl punched again. Alright, Monkey Flying Sun / stop the 2 of them, there are only 2 of them. Those who can't get them will be punished. The Monkey Flying Sun pointed to the wooden stake not far away. That person will be tied to a pillar to watch others eat bento. I will definitely grab the bell. Zilai also shouted, clutching his 2 big bags. Alright, Monkey Flying Sun paused for a moment, the game has started. Upon hearing the command, the snake-eyed man stepped forward and simultaneously took out the bell, which he had no preparation for. The blonde woman quickly exerted her strength and ran to the side, while preparing her sword from her bag. Zilai hesitated for a moment, then ran to the other side and pulled out his sword. Is it a 3-sided pincer attack? Zilai, how is your sword cultivation in your hand? Monkey Flying Sun / thought to himself. The snake-eyed man quickly approached, and the people on both sides also threw their swords to block the path of the Monkey Flying Sun / That's really a good tactic. Ape Flying Sun / flipped his palm, and Ku Wu held it in his hand. He swiped towards Ku Wu, who was facing the snake-eyed man, and placed Ku Wu on the outside. Then, with a thrust of his elbow, the snake-eyed man withdrew a few steps away. Facing the swords in his hands on both sides, Ape Flying Sun / leaped forward and dodged most of them, then used Ku Wu to block the fish that had escaped the net. At this point, the snake-eyed man had already thrown out his sword. Cho Su Chen Zi Su Hai Sien, the technique of separating sword and shadow in hand. Have you also learned this move? What a terrifying person. The monkey flying sun / also threw out his sword and quickly sealed it. Let me take a look at your reality, Orochimaru. The technique of separating sword and shadow in hand. Multiple swords collided and then fell to the ground, all cancelling out. Zilai and the blonde woman wielded the Ku approaching ape flying sun / Great progress. Flashing past the attack, Orochimaru attacked from behind. The reaction is really fast. Ape flying sun / once again turned around to respond, but Orochimaru slid over from the side with a short body. Turning his gaze, Zilai also placed his hands behind his back. Teacher, I want to prove to you that the technique of throwing out all the swords in your hand is useful. Several swords in hand approached the monkey flying sun / at a very close distance. Although the speed was not fast, it was also somewhat frightening. Waving Kuwu, he blocked all the swords in his hand, fixed himself, and only then did he realize that the bell on his waist was missing. Looking back, there were 2 bells in the hands of the blonde and Orochimaru. Zilai is also a big fool. The blonde girl made a face. You don't have a bell, do you? How could you have obtained it if it weren't for your sneak attack while I used the technique of throwing out all the swords in my hand? Zilai, Orochimaru supported his forehead. After all, we are fighting for bells, not in battle. That's it, the blonde woman agreed. Zilai, you lost. Monkey flying sun / ended the game. Teacher, is the technique of throwing out all the swords in your hand very powerful? Zilai also looked at the teacher eagerly. Ape Fei said with a black thread, I know you love using it, but don't use it anymore. The 3 of them were filled with a cheerful atmosphere. In the distant grass, an unknown person silently watched. Chapter 2. Punishment for Failure. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Zilai was reluctantly tied to a wooden stake, and the monkey flying sun beheaded the 3 of them, watching from a distance. Hey, Zilai, your sword has improved a lot. Gangsho stopped his chopsticks and said, have you secretly practiced? The progress is indeed significant, Orochimaru affirmed. I'm a man who wants to be the Hokage, how could I not even practice swordsmanship well? Zilai also looked proud and turned to Tsunade, you'll have to be Hokage's wife then. Bastard. Gangsho punched Zilai hard in the stomach, if you keep talking nonsense, I'll beat you into meat patties. Ah. Flat-chested woman, you see, I can definitely become Hokage. Zilai also confidently spoke. Humph. Gangsho no longer responded to Zilai and started eating bento on his own. The argument was okay, I didn't feel hungry. Since no one had a fight with Zilai, he was actually hungry. However, he felt embarrassed and could only swallow the saliva that reached his mouth. Although Orochimaru didn't care about the Cold War between the 2, he noticed Zilai's appearance. Give it to you, I'm not very hungry, Orochimaru said coldly. This. Zilai felt embarrassed to accept the thought of Orochimaru's usual appearance. Gangsho looked at Zilai, but didn't look at him for a while. His saliva was already on the corner of his mouth. Here. Gangsho picked up a chopstick of rice and reached out to Zilai's mouth, turning his head to show a look of disgust. Zilai didn't care who brought it to his mouth. As soon as he smelled the aroma of the rice, he swallowed it with a whimper. You look really annoying, murmured Gungute in a low voice, still feeding Zilai. Orochimaru looked at the 2 with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Teacher Yuanfei has not returned yet, but Gangsho has put away his lunch box and the 3 of them sit together again. So, when did you practice your sword in your hand? Gangsho asked this question again. Well, it's related to Chris, Zilai smiled awkwardly. That child who doesn't know how to use chakras. Well, he came to me to ask for advice on the technique of wielding a sword. Although he is already very skilled, Zilai also pouted. But as a teacher, I must be much more skilled than my students, so I practiced it a bit. You don't have to brag. Gangsho punched Zilai in the head again, with little force. Can't use ninjutsu, so should we strengthen these? Orochimaru held his chin and showed a hint of interest in the child. Don't use the technique of throwing out all the swords in your hand in the future, it's too foolish. What's so foolish? I've been practicing like this for so many days. What's so foolish? Indeed, it hasn't changed, thought Orochimaru. On the other side, Ape Flying Sun quietly approached Chris, but despite his extreme caution, Chris immediately discovered him. The Monkey Flying Sun had no choice but to walk forward openly. I can go, Chris said before waiting for Ape Flying Sun to say anything. No, that's not what I meant, Ape Flying Sun tried his best to show friendliness. Zilai's progress is related to you, right? I did ask my brother Zilai for advice, although his skills don't look very good. So, did I disturb my brother Zilai's practice? Chris's eyes turned red. I won't disturb him anymore. Ah, this. Ape Flying Sun slashed and caressed Chris's head. You didn't delay him. Really? Ape Flying Sun paused for a moment. Your perception ability seems to be good. I don't know, I felt like someone was getting closer, so I turned around. Well, now we need to continue training, you. Chris nodded and turned to leave the training ground. Not knowing any ninjutsu but having extraordinary perception. An interesting child. Monkey Flying Sun appeared from the grass and walked towards 3 students. The punishment is over. Okay. Gangsho, Orochimaru, go practice on your own. You have also made progress since then, you cannot slack off. Good, Zilai, come with me. Chapter 3. Zilai also disappears. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zilai, next I will teach you a very powerful technique. Give it to me, give it to me. Zilai also looked eager. Hai Suyushin Wei, the art of spiritual communication. With a loud bang, waves of white smoke dissipated, and a large humanoid animal dressed in tiger skin appeared. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a strong ape. Too handsome. Zilai struggled and begged, I want to learn. Step by step, only after sufficient cultivation can you sign a contract with the powerful spiritual beasts. Okay. Zilai also jumped up happily. In the following days, Ape Flying Sun Slayer took time to supervise Zilai's practice, but to his surprise, Chris never appeared again. Are you speaking too seriously? Just as he was puzzled, Zilai also began to seal. Hai Suyushin Wei. Zilai also slapped his hand on the ground. Hey, you haven't signed the contract yet. The Monkey Flying Sun had no time to stop it, and Zilai disappeared before his eyes. As Zilai disappeared, Chris, who was sitting quietly by the river, suddenly felt a gust of wind. Opening my eyes, I found the wind and waves calm and the sun shining brightly. What's wrong with this? Chris asked himself. Without time to tidy up the scroll recording ninjutsu on the ground, he ran quickly to the training ground. Through the barbed wire, he saw Teacher Ape Flying anxiously searching everywhere. Teacher Yuanfei, where are you from? Chris quickly ran over. He used his teleportation technique, I don't know where he went. Ape Flying Sun looked at the panting child with a hint of doubt in his eyes. What's wrong with you? Monkey Flying Sun asked Chris. I was meditating, suddenly. Suddenly it felt like you were coming, Chris described as clearly as possible. Is it like I'm here? Monkey Flying Sun touched Chris's head, we will definitely find Zilai. He's our companion. I believe in you. Go back and wait with peace of mind, child. Chris felt a little at ease and slowly walked back to the river. My heart doesn't hurt, and since then, my brother is still alive. Chris thinks so. Long ago, Chris worked for an old man who was very kind and childless, so he treated Chris as a child. Unfortunately, at the end of the year, a fire broke out, and Chris felt that he didn't want to put down his work to see him. When he arrived at the scene, he only found that the old man was burned to death in front of him. At that moment, his heart was in sharp pain and he fainted. Although the relationship between the two cannot be determined, as long as there is no heart pain, Zilai is definitely alive, but the situation is unknown. Returning to the river, those scrolls were already soaked in water, and the ink stains on them were also unclear. Although this manuscript is broken, knowledge about the art has been engraved in his mind. Although he doesn't know ninjutsu, remembering these ninjutsus brings him endless pleasure. On the other hand, Zilai also fell into a strange place and encountered a big snake fighting with a toad. He intervened and helped the toad. Then, an old toad came to him to prophesy something. Zilai naturally didn't believe it, but the old toad seemed harmless, so he followed along. That very old toad fairy is very forgetful, but she looks very majestic. Xiao Zilai is also here. What's wrong? The great toad fairy. I've been. It seemed like I had noticed something, and the big toad immortal stared at Zilai as well. You. What's wrong with you? It's very interesting. The toad fairy raised his hand and then slapped himself in the wind. Chapter 4. Coming and Returning. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 5. The New Generation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The second generation Hokage died in 1,000 hands. The monkey flying sun / succeeded the fire shadow. Zilai was also promoted to ninja and served as a teacher. On that day, Orochimaru and Tsunade celebrated together, holding Jiraiya. Tsunade rarely hit Jiraiya's head again, which puzzled Orochimaru. Chris also gave a congratulatory gift, which was a technique, but it was derived based on theoretical knowledge and Chris couldn't try it himself. After multiple rounds of calculation, he dared to use it as a gift. Zilai is certainly happy, he put away the scroll and said he will definitely try. Chris wisely left time for the three of them and then went home to study. Currently, Chris has learned a lot of scientific knowledge, but he found that this knowledge is not advanced. It's okay, learning is endless. By the way, the boy with yellow hair in his class, Zilai, is really a handsome guy. He still respects Chris, the senior, very much. It seems to be called the Feng Shui Gate, right? Recently, the friction among major countries has become increasingly intense, and there are often casualties between villages. One night, Chris saw Feng Shui Gate searching for something, and he leaned in. Watergate, what are you doing? Ah, senior, there are enemy ninjas invading Kiba, and it seems that someone has been kidnapped. Shueimen looked at Chris and continued, Senior, you can't help either. I'll leave first. Chris had an intuition that there was wind blowing around, but when he looked at the Feng Shui Gate's hair, it didn't flutter. Is it Saleya? No, he should be entangled with Gangsho or have a drink or something. Can't it be Juxina? I didn't see her this afternoon. Juxina is missing, maybe I can find her. Then let's go together. Considering Chris, Watergate cannot run too fast, but it is also very fast, and Chris's exercise is also quite effective. Quickly, Watergate found the invading ninjas, and those ninjas didn't pay much attention to them as they were just two children. I didn't expect the boy with yellow hair to be so fast, but the sword thrown by the boy without a forehead guard was unexpectedly accurate. With just a few breaths, the figure quickly dealt with the enemy. The enemy attempted to kill the red-haired girl at hand, but the yellow-haired boy quickly killed him like lightning, and then held the frightened girl in his arms. Shueimen, why are you? Ah. If there were enemy ninjas invading, I came. Shueimen was planning to say something else, but when he turned around, Chris had already disappeared. Not long after, due to various problems, the war broke out. The Second Ninja War has begun. Zilai, Gangsho, and Orochimaru went to Yuin to carry out their mission. But Chris appeared in the dark prison. What's going on? Chris's magical perception ability caught the attention of senior management, and if he were to perceive his own ninjas, it could come in handy during search and rescue. This was the original purpose. A very thoughtful guy made another judgment. If he were to be an undercover agent, could he pursue the enemy? The idea is good, but Chris's ability has never been able to trigger it steadily. After studying for a period of time, they came to the conclusion that it must be genuinely recognized. Sincerely, it was not that easy, so he was considered intentionally uncooperative and imprisoned. A few days later, Chris felt the wind and rain approaching. He shook the railing wildly and requested to be sent out, but there was also danger involved. This feeling is stronger than anyone else's, it's not wrong, and Zilai is also under threat. Actually, for the third generation, no one knew about Chris being detained, but his words were accidentally learned by the third generation. Later, he ignored the contempt of some cunning guy and sent a small team to search and rescue Chris. Zilai did indeed face a strong enemy. Banshinshin Jiaoyu Banzang used a telepathic beast to kill most of the Konoha ninjas. Seeing Zilai and the three of them, he was very appreciative and gave them the title of Three Ninjas. He let them go and finally saved the danger. Chris is not doing well here. He was ambushed halfway, and most of the team was killed or injured. Apart from Chris, he has no combat power anymore. Just as they decided to go back home, Chris quietly left. Chapter 6. Chris Rebellion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The captain of the rescue team counted the number of people, except for the injured, the only one who could fight was him, while Chris, who didn't even have a protective shield, probably wouldn't be able to fight. He couldn't help but recall what Lord Tuanzang had said to him before departure: if things didn't go well, bring back the people he should have brought back. Who is this person? Are you a teammate? Hey, little ghost, you come and help the wounded. He did not receive a response. Little ghost. He looked around, damn it, he ran away. No wonder this guy didn't respond to himself just now. Run away, sooner or later die on the battlefield. He couldn't bring so many people alone, so he had to find a place to wait for the injured to recover their mobility. On the other hand, Chris searched for Zilai as quickly as possible and saw many corpses along the way. Is this war? It's really cruel. How fragile life is. Quickly search for the ninja from the corpse, then swallow a blood-soaked weapon pellet and run quickly. The taste of blood, bitter. On the other hand, Zilai and his companions were on their way back to Mai when it started pouring rain. They were hiding under a giant rock and met three children, one of whom asked for food from them. Although I was also very embarrassed, I still gave it to them. Two groups of people do not disturb each other and are on guard against each other. The rain has decreased. The three of them set off again when a girl with blue hair caught up and gave them the origami in her hand. The other two stood a little further away, begging Zilai to also teach them ninjutsu. Zilai, I suggest killing them, Orochimaru suddenly said. Why, this war has already killed many people, why bother involving three children? So what do you do? Don't forget, for them, we are invaders and the ones who destroy their homes. Orochimaru tugged at his cloak and said, what if you teach them? They will also use ninjutsu to kill others, and they will still die, which is no different from killing them now. Although he wanted to refute, Gangsho couldn't say anything for a moment. Look at the child's eyes, Zilai also pointed to Changmen, they are the eyes of reincarnation, the eyes of God, I'm afraid he is the child in prophecy. The eyes of the six immortals. Orochimaru said nothing more. That prophecy, is that child really the son of prophecy? Gangsho was quite puzzled. Since the prophecy has been made, let's give it a try. I will teach them. The three eventually parted ways, and not far away, Chris witnessed everything. Since Tsunade and Orochimaru were going back, he considered himself a defector and couldn't follow them back. So, walking with Zilai is the best choice. Follow them to find a small wooden house, and Chris knocked on the door. Who? Chris. Zilai also observed cautiously and confirmed that it was Chris, then let go of the bitterness in his hand. Mr. Zilai, who are they? Mayan, Changmen and Xiaonan, my disciples. Interesting children, perhaps I can guide them in the art. Ha ha ha, Zilai also laughed heartily, there are so many skills in your area that they can't even learn them all. Yeah, I've read a lot of things. The sky was dim, and Xiaonan and Mayan fell asleep. Zilai also opened his eyes. The long door was gone, and Chris was meditating by the window. Gently pushing the door open, the long door sat on the threshold and didn't look very good. Changmen. Zilai, teacher. Why are you sitting here? What's on your mind? Teacher, are my eyes really a disaster? Of course not. Subsequently, Zilai also told him the legend of the founder of the ninja sect, the Six Immortals, and told Changmen that these pairs of eyes have powerful power and may be able to change the pattern of the ninja world. If Changmen is thoughtful, change. Pattern. This is exactly what Miyako wants to do. He will work hard to learn ninjutsu. The days of cultivation are full of stories, and they encounter many things. Chris and his master and disciples have different goals. Whenever he goes to a place, he first learns about the local history, as well as some unknown secrets and incredible rumors. This makes his thoughts more abundant, and what he sees and hears also brings him many doubts. Zilai is also a good teacher, but he cannot answer all the questions. When Changmen asked how to cut off hatred between people, Zilai couldn't say much. So, how to cut it off? Chris doesn't know either, he doesn't even know how to find the answer to this question. I have received a letter. Chapter 7. Returning to the Leaf of Wood. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Dancing with Snakes. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Hidden in the dark for a long time. Chris followed Orochimaru to meet Shimura Tanzo, who was considered the gold medalist in research. However, Tanzo seemed to not welcome Chris at all and looked down at him with contemptuous eyes. Damn it, how did he come back? Orochimaru, it seems that your cooperation does not include him. Ah, Lord Tuanzang, when it comes to research ability, he is above me. So, who are you guys staying? What a choice, Chris pulled his black robe tightly. I really don't want to talk about the spherical object stored in one of your jars. You. Jitsuan Tuanzang couldn't speak for a moment. You can also choose one or two, can't you? Chris took out a jar and put an eye in the culture medium. Guess when I came back. What did I see again? How did you get it? Those root members are really amazing, I love to be honest. Chris handed the jar to Shimura Tuanzang. I'm also very interested in this type of eye, and I changed the culture medium so that it can be preserved for a long time. Ah, Lord Tuanzang, as you can see, since we have the same goal, why not cooperate? Orochimaru interjected in a timely manner. Tuanzang turned around and agreed, but he had no idea what was on his mind. Chris is a very pure person, and since Tuanzang wants knowledge, the scroll in the Forbidden Room is a necessary investment. As for the research aspect, it is still in its early stages, and Tuanzang cannot be in a hurry. After all, this matter is being done by two scientists. Chris is still happy to stroll around the village, especially when he sees acquaintances. Wufeng Shuimen. There wasn't much to say when the two met, but what interested him was the students from the Watergate class, another genius named Kakashi, and the same crane like Yuchihiro. There was also a girl who was very familiar with the group. When they tried to grab the bell, Yuji Bo and two were tied to the pillar, and Chris smiled heartily. Very similar, isn't it? It is very interesting that Tuanzang never had trouble with Chris again, even though Chris had left Kiba multiple times and was not in the laboratory. I didn't use these as an article, I don't know what he's thinking, but Chris is too lazy to think. Collaborating with Orochimaru is truly a joyful experience. Both of them have already memorized the forbidden techniques, but they still struggle to learn the experimental data. As for what he left Kiba for, Orochimaru doesn't care, Chris always comes back at critical moments. But how can there be so much peace? The Third Ninja War broke out, and some of Kiba was busy, so it was naturally the most convenient time to act. Orochimaru can obtain many live experimental items, and Chris can once again shuttle through various ninja villages, stealing ninjutsu knowledge. Oh, how can a scholar's business be called stealing? Chris has been keeping an eye on Kakashi, and this time they are going to blow up the Shenwabi Bridge. Let me see your abilities. Chimu Shuamao really gave birth to a good child. The skill called Qianyao is very strong, but not accurate enough. As for that soil, it seems better to come from scratch. Chris thought this way and continued to follow them. The water gate has left, can the little ones complete the task? It's hard to say. Oh, Lin has been captured, and Kakashi is struggling. A child who disdains integrity in their mouth and body. What is that? Blood-red eyes, black jade, right will eyes. With such strong observation ability, if he died, I would definitely happily accept that eye. Unfortunately, Dai too can no longer live, and his intact eye has already been transplanted. However, a monster was born, that's not the point. Underground, there is a scent of knowledge that attracts me. Following that white creature, I entered the underground passage. That guy had already discovered me, but who would stop a seeker of knowledge? This is a scene. If you don't bring me in, then I will replace you and bring half of the soil in. At the end of the passage, entering the secret room, Chris seemed somewhat familiar with the old man. Chapter 9. Interesting collaboration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There is a white pipe inserted behind the old man with white hair, which is connected to a huge stone statue. Can you help seal it up? The old man looked at Chris, make your tomb door. I don't have a chakra, Chris smiled and looked at the old man. I think no matter how old Uchiha is, he still has a bit of a chakra. Oh. Do you know me? I saw your legend from those banned old books, Chris shrugged, but your people are not as good as you. You slander my people, aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Do you really care about my slander? Chris snapped his fingers, why did you leave them? You really have a lot of courage, Uchiha sat on a stone chair. Dare to come in here. To be honest, I'm already sweating profusely, Chris pointed to his eyes. I'm very interested in someone's eyes. Have you seen him? Uchiha's body froze. What do you want to know? I'm half of his teacher, Chris found a stone and sat down. With these white guys around, you don't know what's going on outside. You seem to know too much. I'm just a scholar, I just want to know what's not written in the book. Is this considered a last wish? Mr. Ban, you have already invited me in. Is it necessary to speak like this? You're such a jerk, Uchiha said with a laugh, I don't think you'll interfere with my plan, you might even help, right? Perhaps so, Chris looked at the bandaged strip of soil, I will answer your question and hope you will repay me with equivalent knowledge. What is your answer? I always pay on delivery, but it's different from you. You're talking about credibility, isn't it? Cunning argument. I will help you, but I am not very willing to interfere with your plan. I am doing this for a grand goal, to bring peace to the realm of ninja, to eliminate all pain, and to fulfill your wishes. Uchiha leaned back in his chair, do you want to know more? No, it seems like I don't know this kind of thing is the best, Chris pointed to the white creature. I'm more curious about him. This is related to my plan, well, I can tell you part of it too. Listen attentively. The stone statue behind me is an external demon statue, you don't need to know much about it. Those white ones are called Baiju, most of whom have no independent consciousness and are products of external demons. The two moving things you see are none of them conscious. Its main component is the cells of the first generation Hokage. I know this, I have already been exposed to it. Are you still studying cells between columns? Uchiha grinned, trying to be as eerie as possible. You're brave enough. Do we pursue science? We can't just focus on it, do we? It seems that your goal is about to be accomplished. Ban pretended to pull out his own eyeballs, do you still want this? No, I'm very interested, but this kind of transaction is unbalanced. Oh, Ban, let go, I want you to do two things. I will assign the task to this young man, and when he asks you, you must promise him something. Secondly, keep the secret I said. Your second point seems unnecessary, I can do it without saying it. Ha, I planted a spell in your eyes and it will trigger when necessary. There's no feeling at all, is it a transcription seal? I know a lot, Uchiha waved his hand. Alright, we've talked enough. It's time to see off the guests. Happy cooperation. Baiju took him out of the underground secret room, and when Chris saw the light again, he found himself by the seaside. Where is this? The cemetery of the mountains. An interesting place. Yenin village, I'm here. Chapter 10. Dirty Trading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the battlefield between Kiba and Iwaki, the yellow flash established his merits, which is also a very exciting battle. This is probably also a very powerful technique, but it won't be easily obtained. Chris reluctantly spread out his hand and then infiltrated Yenin village. The security here can be said to be very strict. Originally, Chris didn't have any accidents, after all, there was no danger. Yes, it just looks like it. However, due to eye problems, he was still noticed. Yenin noticed this young man with extremely weak chakra. Normal people wouldn't be so weak, although weakness means less danger, anomalies should always be taken into consideration. When entering the library, a child with dark skin stopped Chris. Although smaller than oneself, it looks very powerful. Is it the dark side? I'm being targeted. Chris thought. The wartime villages were not as friendly, so Chris was directly imprisoned and interrogated. For multiple questions, Chris's answer was, I'm here to read a book. According to the survey, the results also seem to indicate that Chris is just a scholar seeking advice. What is the chakra fluctuation on him? According to the news, this young man comes from Konoha and has never experienced chakra fluctuations. So where did the mistake go? It's not easy for Yenin to draw anyone out of the tight front line. It can only be for a minor injured person to investigate Chris's condition. The result is that only the left eye has a hidden chakra. Is he someone from Hinata or Uchiha? No, there's only one, it seems to have been snatched. How did he snatch it? There is a big secret behind it, no matter what. If it's this matter, there's no need to pay such attention, but Chris has too many secrets in his memory, and geographical knowledge plays a very important role in combat. Unfortunately, Yenin does not have a mountain tribe, and obtaining this knowledge can only be achieved through violent means. No use, I will answer your question, and I hope you will repay me with equivalent knowledge. Chris spat out a mouthful of blood and trembled as he said this sentence again. This guy's mouth is too hard, Captain. I have a good idea. What? We all try to pry open his mouth, will Kiba also need him? Do we make transactions? Strike him hard and hold them responsible for the losses on the battlefield. The Third Ninja World War is finally coming to an end, and Iwaki is also discussing a deal with Kiba. Chris has lost his mobility and is only sleeping all day. Kiba never understood Chris's life, and knowing what Chris had done, she finally took it seriously. It is said that someone specifically reported on Chris leaving Kiba multiple times for outings. Chris was labeled as a traitor to the village. It's ridiculous. I already carry the charge of rebellion, so adding another layer doesn't matter. The people in the village each have their own ideas. The apparent purpose is to provide me with knowledge, but I estimate that house arrest is indispensable. The more serious thing is to let the gentleman of the mountain tribe read my memory. Chris thinks so. The transaction proceeded in a timely manner, and Chris was picked up by an old acquaintance. Shimura Tuanzang. Following him were 2 root members. Chris grinned and let out a breath. Sure enough. Jitsu and Tuanzang did not bring Chris back to my village, but hid in a cave halfway through. One person is on guard outside, another is trying to read my memory, and Tuanji is sitting quietly in place. The member in the mountain nodded, Tuanzang opened his eyes and glanced. Another person walked forward and took out Kowu to stab Chris in the heart. A few detonating symbols were posted, and the 3 of them left the cave. No one will know why Chris died, but Tuanzang may have fabricated some lie to take credit for it. Holding Chris's memory in his hand, Tuanzang may be up to something. It's going smoothly, isn't it?